Hello, everybody. Welcome to our second panel and very important launch of the new and 10th ACA in the UAE. For this, I will pass it to my colleague Laila, CEO of the LOEF in the country and co-worker where we meet always. So she will do introduction, but I really want to welcome everybody, especially Gonzalo and Manuel, our co-chairs and co-champions of the ACAs.
Thank you, Eduardo. Ricardo. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Salam alaikum. It's great to have you all here with us. My name is Leila Mustafa Abdulatif, and I'm the Director General of Emirates Nature in association with WWF, also known as WWF UAE. I'm very delighted to have you all here today, and I'd like to initially first extend as well our gratitude to Egypt for hosting us on this global event. Sorry. Perfect. I think if I move a little bit away, then get a little bit more traction. Great. So ladies and gentlemen, the window to close the gap, as we all know, for climate change is getting rapidly closer. This decade is in the next 7 years. We do have a challenge ahead of all of us, and it's absolutely critical that we look at reducing global emissions and trying to meet the emissions target for 2050 and to attain the net zero emissions target collectively by all of us by 2050. Without this, climate impacts and risks, including irreversible risks and climate hazards, increase with every increment of warming. The UNEP's Emission Gap 2022 report underscores this very well, as it clearly states that, unfortunately, we are now not on track to meet the 1.5 degree target that we're all working towards. Furthermore, the UNFCCC's 2022 NDC report estimates that current and combined national climate pledges will put the world on a pathway of around 2.5 degrees of warming by the end of this century. And this report highlights that we really do not have time to spend. We will use 86% of the global carbon budget by 2030, which leaves just 14% of the budget left to the remaining 20 years by 2050. And this is why we're all here today. We cannot afford to lose any more time, and we know that it's important to look at credible and rapid emission targets if we're to achieve what we're collectively trying to achieve. Now, our organization plays a key role in unifying non-state actors, and we're very proud to be here today to announce the launch of the UAE Alliance for Climate Action. We're very excited to have worked very closely with the WWF Alliance for Climate Action as well, specifically in really helping us define what this program should look like. What is the right value proposition for us as being the 10th alliance in the network, in a growing alliance even further. I believe an 11th one was announced just recently today. And we're really excited to be able to work very closely with all of you in the room today, with our private sector, non-state actors, whether they're government, private sector, individuals, educational institutions. It's all about identifying a collective way to decarbonize so that we can essentially effectively reach COP28 and beyond with a true strategy around how can we meet science-based targets. And this is what we're excited about today. We have a very exciting panel that's coming up as well with a number of really key speakers. I would first, before we jump into that panel though, like to also thank our first founding partner and funder and member, HSBC MENAT, for supporting us to kickstart this program today. I would also like to thank the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, who've been really instrumental in supporting us along the way as well and endorsing this program. And I wanted to highlight as well some of the first signatories who have joined the UACA, so we're calling it UACA, UAE Alliance for Climate Action today as well. These include Talabat, it includes Unilever, it includes El Serkal, it includes as well Saraj Power and Apero Group. So please put your hands together for the first cohort of Alliance members. And we're excited to work very closely with them over the next upcoming months as well to look at what decarbonization really truly means for their industry and how could they lead as industry champions as well. So with that, I would like to kick off. This is the very first of a kind alliance as well in the region. And this is the official non-state actor climate alliance in the road up to COP28. So we're excited to work very closely with all of you, and I'd like to introduce Sabrine Rahman, the Managing Director and Head of Sustainability at HSBC EMENA. And please kick us all off with this panel today while we launch UACA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So we have an incredible panel today, so I would like to invite them to join us. So His Excellency Isa Abdulrahman Al-Hashmi, the Assistant Undersecretary of Sustainable Community Sector from the UAE Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, Gonzalo Munoz, the COP25 High-Level Champion, and Manuel Pulgar Vidal, the WWF Climate and Energy Practice Leader, who will help unpack what this all means globally as well as locally. Thank you, gentlemen. So, to start off our conversation today, I'd love to take a bit of a global view, if that's okay, initially. So, to Manuel first, perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about the Global Alliance for Climate Action and what you consider some of the key successes and what you would impart to us in the UAE.
Thank you. Let me start by saying that I am so happy of the launching of the UAE Alliance for Climate Action. It is fantastic. It is fantastic that the coming host country of COP28, it has taken that level of responsibility of organizing a domestic and internal alliance for climate action. To go into your question, let's try to reflect all together what are the values of having this kind of alliances for climate action. For sure, the first value it's a mechanism to implement. When we started this process of non-state actors coming into the same table with negotiators into COPs, that was in 2014, with the Lima Paris Action Agenda, then that evolved into the Marrakesh Partnership. In Glasgow, we got the Marrakesh Partnership 2.0 with Gonzalo, good friend and great champion, and also with the creation of the Alliance for Climate Action. And all the time, during all that period, we've been thinking on to implement the Paris Agreement and to showcase that action, it is possible and even more effective if it is a combination of effort of the public and the private sector, the state actors and the non-party stakeholders. So that is the first element. The second one, it is that an alliance can show leadership, because not everybody it is part of the alliance. The alliance, it is for those who are willingness to lead the process, who can really or are thinking to move that needle, to tell to their own citizens that their willingness it is to really walk the transformational change, for corporations that could show that they will walk the transition suggested by science. So an alliance, it is an element of leadership, and that is a really important element. A third element, it is a semi-formal way to continue encouraging improvement of our actions, to continue raising ambition. That is also key. We know that we are not yet on track. We are a bit far away of what we are expecting this process should be. UNFCCC with the synthesis report, the emission gap report, it is saying that with our current behavior, we could raise temperature in around 2.5, 2.8, and that is too much. So with the alliance, we could see how can we continue improving our action. So it is a place to convene actors to work together, and that is a key element. And finally, it is good to have in the UAE this alliance because the UAE is organizing COP28 just after, the year after we are celebrating this one and COP15 in Montreal. So also it will be a great opportunity to connect and to promote convergence. Convergence and integration are, in my point of view, two main objectives for 2023, are key elements. And also it is important in the UAE because you will organize the global stock take. Global stock take that will show where we are exactly, and how much else we must do to continue raising ambition. So these global alliances are key. And we as WWF, we hope that we can promote and create more alliances within the world. But it is not a club in which you pay a fee and you can come into. The idea is that to have an alliance, you have to show that you can organize different actors to move towards a collective effort and to achieve a collective objective. That is key. So the level of willingness, it is a key element to promote an alliance within the world. So again, congratulations to the UAE for this strong step towards the achieving of our objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. And I think in terms of what you've said and the diversity we've seen in the first round of participants in the alliance has shown that it really is about cross-sectoral participation. Gonzalo, I'd like to bring you into the discussion, if that's okay. I would love to understand a little about the ACAs and the link with the Marrakesh Partnership and your role and how you will continue supporting this towards the road to COP28.
Well, thanks so much, Sabrine. Thank you, Laila, and congratulations for the UACA and for the UAE for this amazing opportunity that you're offering also for the whole region. And through you, Manuel, congrats to the WWF for always leading and putting the hard work on coordinating and bringing all stakeholders together. I want, of course, to celebrate my partner in crime, Ricardo, for taking the lead from Mariana, right? Let's also congratulate Mariana for the role that the work that she did in the previous years, and of course to all of the partners, including of course the HSBC, for the support. Let's go back a little bit on time to understand why the ACAs exist in terms of the history, right? The first ACA was We Are Still In. In the moment when a country perceived that there was a risk of losing leadership on following the Paris Agreement, they said, no, this country is still in. And we have to coordinate all non-state actors in the country in order to push for higher ambition at the national level, or even just to carry, say, the backpack of the climate action in years where you can have potentially a non-committed national government. So we perceive that there are mostly two types of government. Ones that might be failing, and therefore here we are the non-state actors to carry the commitment. And we are capable of doing so, and we have seen that happening in countries that can congregate those non-state actors through the Alliance for Climate Action. And in those countries where we have the right type of leadership, as His Excellency here sitting to show to all of us how, for example, the UAE is committed to follow the mandate, or my home country, Chile, then the ACA becomes the best friend of the authority. You will have here your best friend to implement the NDC, your best friends to identify what are the potential barriers, what can be done in a better or faster way, what are the things that are already happening, and how by bringing those actors together, you can develop even more and better actions. So all of that was quite clear for us in 2019. I remember the first meeting when I joined the ACAS probably was in the SBs in the middle of 2019. And it was so evident that this was such an important tool, but at the same time, we were confronting a hard reality. Normally, climate action, the implementation happens much faster in the Global South. We're failing on bringing more representation from the Global South. And that's a pain. That has been there for quite a long time. So while trying to identify how can we embrace more non-state actors to participate in the implementation of the Paris Agreement, this tool became quite clear to be, if not one of the most important, probably the most important, the most concrete. So we started working with the WF on let's keep on mobilizing more ACAs. Let's try to implement more of them. Well, that happens now is that if you check, well, at that time we were expecting to obtain the extension of the mandate of the champion, the extension of the mandate of the Marrakesh Partnership. So in COP25, the parties accepted or celebrated the extension of the mandate of this, the Global Climate Action Agenda that started with this friend in the Lima's Paris Action Agenda. That first agenda was created for 5 years, so from Paris to Madrid, and then the extension was given in Madrid, but with one condition. They said, let's go for a feedback process to understand how can we improve the Marrakesh Partnership and the Global Climate Action Agenda. So during 2020 and 2021, with my dear brother and friend Nigel Topic, we led a consultation process to obtain the results of those feedback. How can we improve the Marrakesh Partnership and the role of the non-state actors? Guess what? One of the most important things that we obtained from that was this need to get regionalized. This agenda needs to go much faster into the Global South. That was one of the most important observations that we obtained from parties and non-party stakeholders all across the globe. So what did we do? We presented the new version of the Marrakesh Partnership in Glasgow as the Marrakesh Partnership 2.0, and in that document that is already part of the Glasgow Pact, the ACAs are referred as the most important tool for the Marrakesh Partnership and the role of the champions and the global climate action to be regionalized. So this activity that we're having today is not a random activity. It's not just even a formal activity from the WWF. This is an activity that is related to the responsibility of the champions to fulfill the mandate, to fulfill the Glasgow Pact by regionalizing the agenda through this tool. This is something that the UAE will inherit from the champions, so it's extremely important and extremely valuable to have for the first time a country taking the lead, the incoming presidency, with an ACA already in place. So the UACA is so unique, so valuable, that we would probably be celebrating this for a long time.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think that leads in very neatly to really bring it down to the UAE, Your Excellency. So I would love to hear your views on the power of local coalitions to really help deliver your agenda.
Well, thank you very much, and let me start by thanking Emirates Nature, WWF, and the Alliance for Climate Action for bringing us all together today. And I would say that this is such a timely intervention. So we are at the COP where we are discussing implementation together in implementation, and we are launching the UAE Alliance for Climate Action. So this intervention is actually well in line with what the theme of this conference is, and what relies in the DNA of the UAE in working in an inclusive and collaborative way. So thank you for bringing us today, and allow me just to speak more about the way that we are looking at decarbonization and how inclusivity is extremely beneficiary in achieving such target. When we looked at the outcome of Glasgow, the Glasgow Pact in COP26, we noticed that there are so many pledges that comes into the picture, and about 130 trillion US dollars are pledged to support decarbonization, the global economy. I don't think there is a single government or group of governments or even group of companies that could provide all those resources. And for us to be able to decarbonize the global economy, we need to work together, and we need to work in an inclusive manner that leaves no one behind. With that being said, the UAE has embedded inclusivity as part of our thought process, of our policy making process, as well as the setting up regulations and implementation mechanisms. I'll use a couple of examples of those advocates. The first thing is the UAE Council on Climate Change. We have representatives from that represents the federal government. We have representatives that represent cities, the power of the cities that can be brought in order to decarbonize the economy. Of course, in our case, those are Emirates. And of course, we have the representation of the private sector. Within that process, we enable the private sector to think with us, to take a stake in decision making, as well as supporting us in being in implementing all those processes. About 6 months ago, when we started this consultative process, we launched something called the National Dialogue for Climate Ambition, a monthly convention that includes all relevant sectors and players within a specific industry in order for us to take on their opinions, in order to tackle the most challenging questions, in order to discuss hard to abate sectors and how we can implement some of the ideas that comes from them. A tangible example of the outcome and the power of being inclusive and sharing knowledge and sharing thoughts is our ability to switch the cement industry from using fossil fuel to using clean energy, 10% recovery rate of energy, as well as energy switch. We are on the road to being inclusive as much as possible and empowering the private sector to take a stake in this decarbonization process. It's also very critical to know that we believe in this and the UAE Alliance for Climate Action. We actually had a discussion with Leila about 3 months ago, and we thought, how can we prepare for such a move, and how can we align with the private sector and non-state actors in this area? And we launched something called the UAE Climate Responsible Pledge. It was our first step. We laid the foundation into attracting non-state actors to better understand what is net zero and what benefits it brings and what are the opportunities that relies with them. And we had a very simple request from companies. We requested them to do 3 things. We requested them to have climate mitigation and adaptation as a value in their organization. We asked them that they need to be inclusive when setting up such plans, so including youth, women, and vulnerable communities. And the last thing is we asked them to measure their footprint, their carbon footprint. And this enabled them to better understand what is their contribution, what is their potential. And we are very happy that among the companies that has joined the alliance, we have about 4 companies that has already signed the pledge. So it seems like the process is working, and we believe that this alliance will be an integral part of the decarbonization puzzle of the UAE. So again, thanking Emirates Nature WWF for this, and hoping that we will see many, many more joining this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. So Manuel, I have a question for you. So I would love to understand some specific examples, especially at a country level. How has this really impacted the domestic agenda to create really that surge effect, right? Populations and the local community coming together. Can you give some really specific examples for the audience?
Sure. And that is really important. When we thought in the Alliance for Climate Action, since the beginning, we knew that this mechanism would be a tailor-made mechanism. So finally, it depends on the reality of the country. Gonzalo has already brought an example. So when in the US we had those 4 years of climate denialism, it was interesting how quick, I think that it was just 4 days after the announcement in the Rose Garden by former President Trump that We Are Still In was created. So it was a strong and quick response of the non-state actors to say, look friends, we are in. We are still in. So we will continue pushing these countries toward the net zero objective, the resilient objective, by working with the academia, with the civil society, with the business sector, with NGO, with everybody. So that is a good example of that political reality. But there are some other realities. Your country. So in the UAE there is a collaboration in between. What it is fantastic, because in that case the alliance could contribute not only to continue encouraging the country to move towards the achieving of their own NDC, but also to the opposite, to implement it. Because in every country, the NDC will reflect the reality of their own emissions. In my country, Peru, our main source of emission it is deforestation and land use. In some others, it could be transport. In some other, cattle. In some other, energy. So the point it is that the alliance will contribute with what it could be the main source of emission to continue not only encouraging the country but the opposite, to implement it. And also to include people on the ground. Because this is not just a political debate. This is a debate in which we have to continue including people who is working on the ground. People who can show that even with their traditional knowledge, they can contribute to the process and to the objective. So that is a second element that it is very important. But look, friends, the alliance, it is not only for mitigation purpose. It must be even for adaptation. Because adaptation, it is a key element in most of countries around the world. We know how much and how strong climate extreme events we are currently suffering. And we do know how important it is to map our level of vulnerability, to develop our national adaptation plans. By the way, it is a bit sad that just 37 countries of the 200 countries around the world have presented a national adaptation plan. Adaptation, it is a key element of the action of the climate agenda. And the point it is that when we think about adaptation and vulnerability, it is not just because human being, it is not just because ecosystem, also it is because the economy. Our economy, it is strongly dependent of the level of vulnerability of the country. It could be related to fisheries, it could be related to water scarcity for our crops, it could be related to many, many things. So that is also a key element. And also a good example, it is, and I've already told you this, it is how much the alliance can connect our nation and our climate objective. And I don't like to repeat what I've already told you. So, Sabrine, to summarize your question, it will depend on what is the need in the country. And that is the magic of the alliance. It is that as it is a tailor-made mechanism, it will respond to the need of the country. So I hope that, for example, in case of the UAE, it is based on what are the plans you have already mentioned, your decarbonization pathway, and also how much we have to accelerate that transition, that the alliance will contribute to that vision.
Thank you very much. And Gonzalo, I would love to understand, are there any pitfalls or any warnings that you'd like to give to the UAE of things that haven't worked well in a very open and transparent way?
Oh, great. Thank you for bringing that. Great moment. Ready, Laila? Well, I would say one of the things that we encourage countries to take into consideration is to have all stakeholders be represented, to have not only, again, it's natural that in each country you will have that ingredient that is stronger, related to the priorities of the country, as Manuel just has referred. And I do, as well as he said he will not repeat it, I will repeat it. The connection between climate and nature, the participation in the CBD, the possibility of bringing nature as an important topic in an ACA probably will be one of the relevant accents that the UAE can bring. But then let's allow the other actors to have a role. And it will, of course, differ from country to country. The way the subnational governments get structured is absolutely different from one country to other one. So we will expect for the UAE to find a way for those subnational governments to participate. We need the youth, we need the academic sector, we need also to bring more NGOs to participate. Of course, you're representing the financial sector that is absolutely critical. We heard about the Unilevers and other members of the the business sector. Let's try to bring the SMEs as well. So the possibility of bringing them all is absolutely structured in the methodology. We would expect that you will create the conditions for all of them to be participating. And of course, there is a big challenge on how do we become, and the UACA, to become enough independent from the government, but at the same time becoming that best friend of the authority, right? Not to be embedded into the public sector, but be participating with them, for them to know that this is the best sounding board, but you need to let them do the work on identifying which are those initiatives that are working, which are the enabling conditions, which are potentially the rocks that need to be removed in the road, right? So managing that is really critical. Have too much independence and not connecting to the government will be a failure. Being too close to the government, that whatever, I mean, the meetings are inside the governmental building would be like a kind of failure. Let's give them the independence for really analyze what is working and how they can become that best friend of the authority, where the authority can be invited to this place where these people gather. And hopefully the other thing that we expect to happen is that in a period of time, we will be celebrating and thanking the WWF for leading the first part, but then it should be an entity with its own governance. We should not expect for the WWF to always be leading and governing and having the holding the pen the whole time. So allowing this entity to be independent is also the same. It has the same relevance. We have to allow the kid to grow, but when it's starting to give the first steps, then it must become independent. That's also important in the whole structure.
And has that happened? Sorry?
Yeah.
Has that happened in another?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in Chile is a good case where it's working well. We're seeing some of that happening also in Brazil. There are different, again, every ACA has its flavor. And it's related to the reality of the country, to the priorities, as Manuel said, but also to its function. We're seeing, of course, countries like Brazil or Australia or Japan, where the influence at the national level has been absolutely critical on trying to, on successfully allowing the country to go further on their strategies, on their commitments, on their ambition. In some other, it's much more working at the implementation level. We have to do both, right? We have to influence at the political level, but also deliver concrete action, both in mitigation. So let's show the CO2s, the CO2, the tons that we are mitigating, but also how we are increasing the resilience and adaptation metrics of the population in the country. Both, right? But then we have to collaborate in terms of creating the conditions for this entity, I would say, to become, and I'm wearing my champion's hat, to become the house of the Race to Zero and Race to Resilience members. And therefore, that will create the conditions for them to have their own governance and bring the impact and the opportunities for the government.
Thank you. Manuel?
Just to complement the first part, my only warning to all the alliances: this is an alliance not based on numbers, because it is not a club, no, that by paying a fee you can be in. It is an alliance of quality, quality of the commitments, quality of the willingness. Because I do prefer an alliance of two well-committed partners than 100 of greenwashers. So that is a key element. And why I am bringing this warning? Because remember that we are in this transition in trying to recover credibility on the system. You remember that in COP26, the UN Secretary General raised this concept of credibility gap, to avoid greenwashing, to say we have to secure high quality, high integrity intervention. And that is why also he convened this high level expert group, presented its report the former week, a good report of principles that it is recognizing the importance of the race to zero, also the SBTI and all of that. So, and also that group, it is suggesting the task force for net zero regulation. That would be the next step. So probably this system is moving from a voluntary basis, that it is a current, into a regulated system. Interesting evolution. So the point is that we have to show that we are strongly working in high quality and high integrity. So avoid greenwashing always. It is a key element to secure a strong alliance.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, I have a question for you. You referred to consultation with the private sector, with civil society in the development of the roadmap and various initiatives of the ministry. Could you elaborate on the value that has brought and the understanding that has brought in the development of initiatives and decarbonization pathways?
Sure. I think when we look at such alliances, we need also to think of the synergies that will be created among many sectors. So we have many organizations that have joined our climate responsible pledge. Some of them, they have a very low carbon footprint, but we keep on asking ourselves, why are we including also those sort of stakeholders? It's actually the learning that would be created through consultation and through discussion that enables other also players to be engaged more and to avoid going through the same mistakes on and on. So within our profile, we have, for example, many financial institutes that have joined this this pledge, and those financial institutes has realized that there is a potential, and there are many opportunities for them to provide competitive and tangible products that could enable other industries to decarbonize. On that specific note, we have many discussions that resulted in having those heavy industries getting financed to implement solutions, mitigation measure solutions that could provide tangible solutions to decarbonize their industry, such as heat recovery solutions, solarization, energy efficiency programs, and also transforming toward electric vehicles. So the examples that are brought in through this alliance and through the discussions that will conclude in many tangible projects, and we believe that on its own, the learning and the sharing of expertise would create a more educated society and will have a spillover impact not only on institutes and corporations but on the individual themselves. And many of those interventions could be taken on an individual level and implemented to create a real world solution that helps us in achieving our decarbonization plan.
Wonderful, thank you. I've got a little bit of time for a few questions if anyone would like to ask our panelists, if that's okay. Yeah? Are there any? Yes?
A very good afternoon, the panels and everyone. My name is Mr. Muhammad Danbapa. I'm a co-founder of a circular economy company based in Dubai. So this is a proud moment for us to see such kind of initiatives happening. My question is to the panelists with regards to the point that the gentleman made with regards to the warnings and the pitfalls. What kind of expectations are on small businesses that are on private sector, and what type of contributions can they make at the stage that is going to be a quality and of value added to the alliance? Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. So I didn't get your name well. Mohammed, thanks so much, Mohammed, for the question. What I would say, and totally related to what Manuel have just said in terms of who should be participating in an ACA, we like to have certain conditions for the members, right? For example, in our country, we're mostly inviting companies that are committed to the Race to Zero, cities as well. You can be Race to Zero, Race to Resilience, or sometimes it can be some that might not be part of Race to Zero, but they have a formal commitment with science that is aligned with the 1.5 degrees. So I mean, the conditions, again, is something that the UACA will define. We will suggest that it will be important to be aligned to those mechanisms that we have in place to recognize very easily which are those organizations that are well committed to those that you may have doubt, right? So in the case of the SMEs, I started a circular economy company working in 14 countries in Latin America, so we are colleagues here. I can tell you that we are already a member, we're a founding member of Race to Zero, of course, but we're also promoting a lot a tool that is also a way to get to the Race to Zero that is called the SME Climate Hub. The SME Climate Hub is a tool that we developed during the last years in collaboration with Women Business, the International Chamber of Commerce, and Exponential Roadmap. And it's very good not only to create the conditions for SMEs to understand what it means to really tackle your scopes 1, 2, and 3, how to work even with your value chain, but mostly how to propose this value to your clients. Most of your clients might be potentially cities or big companies, and in that case, some of those clients are already potentially committed to the scope 3. So you become absolutely fundamental for them to achieve their commitments. That's the type of logic that we have to embrace in the coordination among the different actors in the ACA. So it's fantastic when you realize just by participating there, what are the opportunities where you are now kindly offering your services to organizations that are aligned with these same values, whether they are companies, whether they are cities or some national governments, how to provide even services to the national government. And of course, you are now somehow more visible for those $135 trillion that His Excellency just referred to. Those are $135 trillion that are participating in the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. Those are banks like HSBC, but also pension funds and asset owners and asset managers and insurance companies. That money needs to flow to companies that are committed. So by participating in the ACA is not only that you are following, walking the talk, and I would say even running the talk, but then you're visible for all of these virtuous community for you to participate and even grow your business.
Any other questions? No? Fine. Yes.
Hi everyone, David Ramos from HSBC as well. I heard a lot of collaboration between different state members and the different state actors in the local UACAs, but I haven't heard that much about how different UACAs collaborate with each other. Is there any kind of supra UACA membership that actually help advance at another level?
Well, that's what we're here for. And tomorrow, as Ricardo mentioned, we will have a strategic day on analyzing how can we start creating that collaboration for the strengthening of the current ACAs, for the best way to come to birth for the UACA, but also for covering quite a substantive pipeline that we have in terms of what can come next. But I will pass it to Manuel for him to explain much.
No, not too much to add. It is true. We are not only following what each one of the ACAs is working on, but trying to define strategies, not to align them, because again, this is a more tailor-made mechanism, but at least to have a strong coordination to see how can we continue strengthening the alliance and all those kind of things. Probably it is not exactly related to your question, but probably this COP, it is showing the effectiveness of bringing the non-state actors into the table. I don't know how many of you went to Warsaw COP19 before of having this dynamic. It was completely different. And then we started in Lima, modest, but with the launching of the Lima Paris Action Agenda. In Paris, we have an action week. And look now, I know that there are some people saying, but this is too much, this means it's kind of fair, no? Yeah, it could be, it's a bit noisy for sure, very difficult to listen. But here is the energy of people trying to show that things are possible, that we can continue moving things forward. That is the magic of bringing all the actors into the table. If we are in the same collective vision, this is fantastic. This is what the action agenda has shown how effective it could be. We used to have 100% of negotiators in the past. Now we have half and half, probably around that. 50% of non-state actors, 50% of negotiators representing their own country. And that is the add value of the action agenda. There is a colleague from the Stanley Foundation. Okay, sorry for the name, I'm very bad with name. Stanley Center. And we discussed in the past, action, it could happen despite of our efforts of building this alliance. That is true, because it depends on the willingness of each one of the actors. But there is an add value of bringing together actors, of bringing together the non-state actors and the public sector. That has an advantage, an add value of collaboration. Some days ago, a report about radical collaboration, it was released. And that radical collaboration, it is a key element. Because by working together, you can always do something else. That is the element. The alliance, it is a good mechanism to work beyond lines, to continue improving our ability to address our objectives.
Very inspirational. I hope that answered your question. One last round of questions, if there's no other questions from the floor. Your Excellency, if we fast forward 12 months, we're sitting at COP28. What has been a successful year for you when it comes to this alliance, but more broadly for the UAE?
I think when we look at this alliance, I think as my colleagues mentioned, it's all about the effectiveness of this measure. So the way that we look at this alliance is that it is again an integral. Well, I think as my colleagues mentioned, the way that we look at the alliance is about how effective is it in achieving the government, in supporting the decarbonization effort. With that being said, I think the alliance would form an integral part of our decarbonization puzzle, and as much as we have more engagement with the non-state actors and empowering their voice to be as inclusive as possible in the way that we shape our regulations and policies, that would be, I think, a major achievement in the way that we look at the alliance. So voicing out basically the opinions and the viewpoints of the non-state actors, as well as youth and, of course, NGOs, that would be something of an interest for us, I think. And, of course, the alliance is a very robust tool of implementation. So we should be able to use the alliance to test our hypotheses when we move to implementation and how those are fit to the purpose of what we are trying to do. Actually, we had a couple of discussions with our colleagues, I think some of them are here, when we looked at one of the regulations, and we were trying to solve for waste management. And we noticed that some of the solutions that are proposed, yes, would solve for environmental protection, environmental health, but might lead actually to having higher carbon footprint. So that sort of engagement and feedback that we want to loop in during the policy making process in order for the Alliance to help us in shaping the way that we plan our interventions as well as implement them in the most optimal way. Thanks.
So I will ask the same question to both of you with a different lens, right? So success for global alliances, but also the collaboration between the different chapters around the world. What does success look like? I mean, we've already had a wonderful commitment from His Excellency in terms of the collaboration and the consultation that they will have. So 12 months, medium term, long term, what is your vision?
So I would say, and I need to refer again to the history of the Act and this challenge that they are solving in relation to the representativity of the Global South in the global discussions. What I'm expecting that will happen, probably, and it can happen in the next 4 months, is that we can have a strong network of ACAs from the Global South, and that can bring much more representativity of the Global South into the global discussions, as well as landing the conclusions of COP and any global discussion into the reality of the communities and the territories that require this agenda to be accelerated urgently. So in that sense, what I can imagine is that if we are successful, then we will probably should have, nowadays we have in the Americas 5 ACAs. Yes, we might have whatever, 9 or 10, and that can create a group that will collaborate also in the Americas, and we can have that as a representative in the Marrakesh Partnership and representative in the global discussions when it comes to bringing the action from the global state actors, non-state actors from the American region. Same thing here in Africa, same thing in the MENA region, same thing in Asia. So how about dreaming about that? Having not only, whatever, 20, 30, 50, sorry, Lily, 50 ACAs in the Global South, but those also will organize at a sub-regional way that can bring the knowledge, the experience of that sector into the global discussion. That maybe some of you might not even imagine how important, how much needed it is to really have that connection being one very validated. So the ACA is the way to validate that knowledge, to validate that collaboration, that integration, and then that experience enriches the discussion, but then is the perfect way to land and accelerate the changes and the implementation that we require. That's how I perceive success, and I do expect that COP28 will be a fantastic way to show this as a possibility. So we are already planting the first seed today, right? Let this grow and grow not only for the UAE but also for the MENA region and for other regions of the world. But also, this is a moment when we're seeing, as His Excellency said, the importance of an agenda that is absolutely inclusive, including, of course, the importance of the Arab countries to be ones that are leading all of those changes that will require in the world. This is fascinating as a moment in history that will allow us to see the maximum potential of this agenda in every region in the world, starting with the Arab countries.
Wonderful, thank you. Manuel, any last words?
Wow, I have a list of 10 ways to measure success, so I will
Very short, please.
I will summarize in 2 or 3. It is to you from the UAE. So we are in sad times. No, we are in times of crisis and emergency. We are in the middle of a war with all the consequences in energy crisis, food crisis, inflation, financial crisis. So for me, from now until the end of the next year, I hope that this process can show how effective, how resilient, and how much, despite of the crisis, can continue moving things forward. That is like the baseline. The baseline it is that in this time of crisis we are used to being tempted not to go back to the past, no, and to continue exploiting or opening more fossil fuels places or to go to the past. So I hope that we can show that it is the opposite, as it has been demonstrated by the US with the Inflation Reduction Act, that it is a law with a title, economic title, but that it is really a climate package, that it is a fantastic point. So that is my first. The second one, it is that I hope that we can celebrate by COP28 that 2023, it has been a year in which we have been able to raise ambition. Because unfortunately, we are not in that situation by now. 2022, it has not been a good year in relation to new and enhanced NDCs. So I hope that in 2023 we can switch that dynamic and really bring back countries to say we have to continue raising ambition and improving our actions to put the world on track. So that is a key element, and in that sense the alliance can contribute strongly. The third element of success, it is more related to if we are able to get this world mitigation program with a sectorial approach plus the global stocktake in the UAE. I hope that the global stocktake and the world mitigation program can bring some new ways of continue enhancing that ambition. But also it is about the global goal on adaptation. It is about the $100 billion. It is sad that still we haven't fulfilled with that promise that it should have been fulfilled by 2020, and we are ending 2022. So I have a lot of expectations to the UAE that I am sure we put all their best to continue raising ambition, to move in the world towards adaptation, to shift or to dynamize the resource mobilization and to promote convergence.
Thank you. We will do that and more. So, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. But before we end, I'd like to invite onto the stage Marina Antonopoulos, who's the Director of Nature and Conservation and Climate for EWS WWF.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful panel. Great discussion. A lot of excitement. Hard work and pressure for us. But we're determined to deliver. Thank you. I appreciate it, Gonzalo. Well, thank you very much. I mean, we heard all these inspiring words and your lessons and your vision about what you're expecting from the Alliance from next year. So we're about to start our hard work. Can you hear me okay? Yes. So we just wanted, before we close this session, we just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview about what are we planning to do in the next few months. Also announce our new partners that we bring aboard for next year, and the first signatories that Leila mentioned earlier. So I promise I will not take too much of your time. Okay, so here, the year of implementation. So the vision of our alliance is to create strong collaboration, relationships and partnerships with non-state actors, as already been mentioned. The goal is to increase the momentum in the UAE, increase the readiness of non-state actors, but also looking into what action that we heard earlier is needed on the ground to link with the Paris Agreement via credible targets and commitments. And of course, our UACA COP is not going to finish at the next COP. Can you hear me? Okay. The idea is to leverage the momentum that is growing in the country to COP28, and the idea is to continue the implementation beyond that. And we have two pillars of work. I have a problem with. Let's see how this goes. All right. So the year of implementation is jam-packed with action for us. We have two pillars that we're going to be centering our work across. The first pillar is around climate action. So the idea here is that to help the organizations get ready and more confident in increasing their ambition in the UAE. We have a series of technical support series, webinars, support that our new partner BCG can also provide to organizations that they need a little bit more customized discussions. Thank you. And the idea is also here to look at deep dives. So we're going to start into trainings and demystifying what are those, initiatives that we discussed earlier. What is the Race to Zero? What is the science-based targets? What is net zero? So the idea is to demystify what that means for organizations on the ground in the UAE, but also looking into deep dives on topics that are very important for our stakeholders locally. So Scope 3 emissions, we heard nature and climate, decarbonization pathways and technologies, things that are very important for our members. And of course, the idea is also not to only give them knowledge, but also start sharing the good work that is already happening, and we hope that it's going to continue happening, and that we hope that will inspire more collective action. So case studies, knowledge products will potentially inspire more action across our communities. So the second pillar is about collaboration, obviously. So collaboration is about creating a platform for dialogue across non-state actors, policymakers, academia. Let's not forget that academia is one of the important non-state actors. But I can't really do anything. Okay, I'll cut it short maybe. I will continue. So the idea is to cross-fertilize ideas. So we heard earlier that financial institutions are also keen to hear what are the barriers that the actual real economy sectors are facing on the ground, or collectively exploring what are the enabling conditions we need to see on the ground to inform new policies and plans and link to what the non-state actors are doing in the UAE with the upcoming NDCs as well. So these are the type of work we're essentially planning to do. The idea is not to inscribe everything from the beginning. The idea is to have an ideation session with our signatories and together develop a very detailed work plan that makes sense for our members and it also makes sense for the UAE context, right? Gonzalo mentioned that earlier, global vision, but it has to make sense for our local stakeholders. We have some technical problems, so bear with me. Oh, okay. Anyways, I will continue without the slides. So I think Manuel touched upon that earlier, and he said that it's important to note that the alliances are not necessarily a club. It's not only a gathering. It's about commitments. And though we're engaging with different organizations and we encourage everybody who is serious about taking the next steps for decarbonization and emission reductions to join us, the idea is also to have a strong commitment over a set period of time. So joining members are asked to sign a set of principles for us and abide through time. So credibility, transparency, collaboration, increasing ambition, and also make sure that the UACA is member-driven are some of the principles that we're asking joining members to abide throughout their engagement with UACA. This is really important because we want to make sure that we're all working together collaboratively, openly, and towards the same ambition. We need to make sure that that is clear for everyone. The second thing we're asking the joining members to do is to commit to an increasing ambition. So organizations enter at different levels depending on where they are on the decarbonization journey, if you like. But there is a specific time horizon that we're expecting our members to meet and go into the next ambition forward. So that's the two commitments that we're asking signatories to essentially commit to. And we hope that we together collaboratively again explore what makes sense to enhance action on the ground in the UAE. So here you see on that slide, for those of you who want to know more about the Alliance, visit our website, drop us a note. We have an enthusiastic team of people working on the ground. So we're happy to take you through what the Alliance is in more details. And I'll try to change to the next slide. Can somebody help us from the... Okay, now it's changed. Yes, here you go. So just to mention again, I think we discussed that earlier, we're the 10th alliance for, as part of the global network of alliances. We're very keen to work with Ricardo, and we have a special thanks for you, Ricardo, for helping us shape this program, and all the ACA's team and the previous pandas as well. So we're happy to talk about it a little bit more, how to contribute to the whole global group. And of course, we're endorsed by the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment, and thank you, Your Excellency Isa, for your support. So next, again, just to thank the founding donors, the first founding donor, actually, HSBC Minat. You have been with us for quite some time on this journey, so we thank you for making this possible so we can implement the work. We have a new partner organization, the Clean Energy Business Council, that is we're going to work very closely with them on the technical component as well, and the different training sessions. And BCG for being a knowledge partner. And again, we're going to work very closely with you on the technical side of things on the UACA. So thank you very much for your support. And we have our first signatories. A big round of applause for all the signatories. And just back to Manuel's point, this is not a straightforward conversation because signatories really need to look at what are the principles, what are the commitments that they need to make upon joining. So thank you all so much for being very inspired by this and being the first ones to come into play. So we have, of course, HSBC, Talabat, Unilever Group, Siraj Power, Arsical Group, and Apparel Group. So with all of you, we would like to go to the UAE Pavilion as well and sign the commitment letter. And with that, I'll just finish and thank you all for the session.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much. With this, we finish this panel. We invite you for our next session. We have two, for those who wonder what the Global Alliance Network is. We have more than 6,000 signatories in now 10 countries. So we're going to make some pictures, but we start again at 4 to speak about cities, and then at 5 we're going to speak about water scarcity in cities. So please join us, and we have now a bit or less than half an hour break, and we make the pictures.
The message was well sent, super clear, and it's not in the most important slide, but it was about the.
Gracias, chicos.